Have you ever wished upon a star that an architect would just pop up on YouTube and give you the exact secret formula for a beautiful living room? Well, today is your lucky day because that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to learn how to lay it out, we're going to learn how to style it, and we're going to learn how to finish it off like a pro. So stick around because by the end of this video, you'll be ready to take on those living rooms. Hi guys, if you're new here, my name is Louie. I'm an architect and a designer with 20 years of experience in design, and I am obsessed with interiors, how we live, and how we build our spaces. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and hit subscribe, and now let's get into the video. So like a problem called Maria once said, we're gonna start at the very beginning because it's a very good place to start. And that place is step number one, plan your space. Now, why is this so important? Because before we come in with furniture, aesthetic decisions, style choices, fabrics, everything that's going to make that living room so beautiful, first we need to understand what it needs to do. Because once you comprehend what's happening in that space, you can actually design for it. So this is where you take stock of your program and you're going to just decide what activities are taking place in there. And you're also going to take stock of your constraints. And that means windows, doors, things that aren't easily moved, like a pillar. That kind of thing will help shape your decisions. So you need to have a good comprehension of what it all means before we get started. So here's how to apply all of that into your space. You're going to start by making a short list of activities that take place in the space. So you're going to ask yourself, who uses the room? What activities happen here? Is it TV, reading, kids, work, entertaining? So as an example, let's just do one together. For our example living room, we will have a young couple with a dog. And in this living room, the couple likes to hang out. They like to watch movies, entertain friends, and the dog is always with them, so the dog hangs out there too. So with all of this in mind, here's what our program is going to look like. We need an area for seating, for hanging out and entertaining friends. We also need a spot for the TV and media unit because movie nights are important. We also need a spot for the dog so that he has his own place within the space, like somewhere you can pop his bed, for example, just so he has a sense of belonging. And let's also add a serving station like a bar or a coffee station, somewhere easy access to serve snacks and beverages when you have guests over. Once you've done that, you are going to sketch a quick bubble plan. So place all the spaces you defined in your program, seating, TV, dog spot, and serving station, while considering entries, circulation, and focal points like a fireplace, a TV, or a window. It doesn't have to be precise. It's just something to get it down on paper so that you have a little plan once you get started. If you've ever hired an architect, you can be sure they asked you about how you live, what you do, what your hobbies are, and that's because they really want to tailor their design to your lifestyle. And I think that you should too, with or without an architect, with or without a designer. You can do it yourself. It's not that complicated. So I'm going to give you some examples of how to prioritize your lifestyle within your layout. So for example, if you have kids, then you probably have lots of toys, and I should know I have 3 of them, lots of stuff all over the place, just clutter, and it'll gather overnight like magic. So what you want to think about there is that maybe you need baskets, or you need smart storage, or maybe just like a large hamper style thing that you can keep in the corner of your living room and just sweep up all those toys and put them away. Or if you work out in the living room, then you might need some more space for stretching and doing your exercises. So in that case, you might want to have like a more open area within your living room. And if you can't have that because your space is small, then you want to put furniture on wheels so that you can just kind of push them away and create the space that you need in order to work out. If you work in your living room, then you want to think about maybe using a different kind of media console so that you can also include your storage for your office supplies, or a desk where you can work in a corner or near sunlight for productivity. If you don't watch TV, then maybe you want to get rid of the media console and the TV and add in more seating. If you have guests over all the time, you want to prioritize flow and seating so that people can move around and have areas for conversation. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how you can create a layout and a design that supports your lifestyle and your activities. Okay, moving on to step number 2. Step number 2 is about layout and furniture orientation. Now, I've told you guys before that I worked in fashion for quite a while. In fact, I was a designer. So I have a lot of these references in my mind. And one of them is this Alexander McQueen show. Some of you might remember it. It was called La Poupée, and it was inspired by dolls. And what he did was he created this metal structure that the models would wear. And it was something where they would have to kind of bend in an odd shape. And what I particularly loved about that show is that he was showing how design can shape more than how you look, right? So it wasn't about dressing the model as much as it was choreographing a new way of walking and moving through the outfit. So by putting on that metal structure, all of a sudden, the models couldn't move like they usually would. Their arms were not placed as they usually would be. So by doing so, he created a new way of movement, and he could show how design can interfere with movement and with the way that we walk and talk and, just kind of alter our living experience through design. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because the same thing can be done in a living space. So architects will, much like Alexander McQueen, choreograph how people move, how people interact with the space through the layout and through the furniture placement. So coming back to our point, basically, this is when your bubble diagram or your bubble sketch starts to become a reality. This is where you're going to decide what furniture comes into the space and where it goes. And here is how you do that in the best way possible. So we're going to start by revisiting your activities. So ask yourselves once again, how do I really live here? For example, movie lovers, you're going to want a sofa-facing TV. You want blackout curtains and soft lighting. If you're a host, you want to prioritize multiple seating clusters so people don't get stuck in one corner. If you're a pet parent, you want to opt for performance fabrics, slip covers, washable throws, and a dedicated pet spot. Basically, your layout should reflect your life and your lifestyle. And here is how we can get even deeper into the subject. Anchor your space with a focal point. Now, every room needs a place for the eye to land. Stay there and orient your main seating towards it. So common focal points will include a TV wall, a fireplace, a big window or a beautiful view, large artwork, or a feature wall. And if you don't have an obvious focal point, don't worry, because I'm going to teach you how to make one further on in the video. You also don't want to push everything against the walls. I know it feels like you're gaining space this way, but it actually flattens the room and makes it feel more cramped. So instead, you're going to pull your sofa 3 to 5 inches, that's 8 to 12 centimeters from the wall, and this tiny gap adds depth and feels purposeful. And if you have the room, floating the sofa even slightly can instantly make the space feel designed. These are the kinds of little changes that will make your space feel curated and designed and not accidental. You also want to shape conversation, not just furniture. So you want to think about how people will sit and talk. Now, even a small angle matters. For example, if you tilt a chair towards the sofa by just a few degrees, it suddenly feels more inviting and less stiff. Or you could place 2 chairs in a corner or by a window to create a conversation corner. What we want to do is more than just place the chairs. We want to encourage contact and connection through layout. Before we move on to the next step, I really want to go through some designer rules that I think you should consider following. Now, guys, I always mention rules because I think they're a great way to get started, give you a guide, and give you a North Star to follow, so to speak. But feel free to break them, okay? If you know what you're doing, you can break them with purpose and beauty. So yeah, but before you break them, let's learn them first. So the first one is the rug rule. You want the front legs of sofas and chairs to sit on the rug, and if the rug is floating alone, it's too small and it will disconnect the room. Next one is flow space. You want to leave 16 to 20 inches or 40 to 50 centimeters between pieces so movement feels natural, effortless, and not cramped. We also have a conversation triangle. Now, this classic formula rarely fails. It's a sofa, 2 chairs, and a coffee table in the middle. It's symmetrical, it's social, and it's flexible. And finally, we have smart storage. That means storage ottomans, coffee tables with storage, floating shelves or slim cabinets, that kind of thing. Aim for 80% hidden storage and 20% styled display. So here's the key takeaway for step number 2. It's not about a Tetris of pieces and just kind of seeing what fits where. It's about actually designing with intention and shaping the way you live, the way you feel, the way you move in a space through furniture orientation. Now, layouts and furniture, they have the power to support your routines, your rhythm, your activities, and make your living experience so much better. Okay, before we move on to step number 3, I just want to take a quick pit stop at the Splurge and Save because we need to learn how to budget appropriately. So here's a budgeting rule that I like to use. Now, it's not a strict formula, but it is a really good starting point, and that is the 50-30-20 rule. And this is how it works. 50% of your budget is going to go towards your main pieces, those statement pieces that you need to pull everything together. 30% is going to go for supporting furniture. So if your main piece is a sofa, then you're going to go with a side table or a coffee table, and that will be your supporting furniture. And 20% will go towards decor and textiles. So all of the little finishing touches that you need to just kind of make it the way you want it to be, but you don't actually need to spend a lot on. So 50-30-20. All right, now we're moving on to step number 3, and that is optical illusions and how to make your space feel bigger. And here's the thing. This is where we get into all the little magic tricks that we architects use to kind of shape the space and your perception of it. Because the reality is, guys, big room, small room, design will shape perception. And when you learn the tricks, you can do it yourself. And here's an unpopular opinion. I'm not a big fan of magic, okay? I love to see magic tricks. I think it's so much fun. But what I really want to know is what they never tell us, which is how did they do it? I want to know. I want to know the tricks. That's the fun. That's the interesting part, right? It's not just seeing a card pop up, I don't know, disappear from your hand and pop up behind a window. It's how. How did they make that happen? That is the juicy part that of course they won't share with us, but here on this channel, I will share and I will tell you all the juicy secrets to my magic tricks. And here are a couple that will help you today. Let's start with light and reflection. So position a large mirror opposite or next to a window. This doubles the depth, spreads daylight, and visually expands the room. Think of mirrors as architectural tools, not decor, because they can bend space. You also want to keep sightlines open. So that means low profile sofas and chairs that keep the room from feeling chopped up, because if you can see over your furniture, your brain reads more space. Another one is to draw the eye up. So vertical shelving, slim tall lamps, narrow wall paneling, all of these add height, lift the eye, and your walls will suddenly feel taller. You can also paint trims slightly darker than the walls. It will create a grounding effect for the room and give it depth without feeling heavy. Also choose tonal or monochrome palettes. When colors harmonize instead of compete, the space feels calmer and instantly larger. And also be mindful of visual weight. 1 or 2 big pieces is better than lots of medium ones. Okay, so if you need more help on how to decorate a small space, then I have 2 great resources. The first one is a video on how to make a small space feel bigger, and there are all kinds of tricks that you can use that will immediately expand your space. And another one is one on comfy studios, and basically it'll teach you how to organize and design a studio space, which is, small and it has to be well zoned and in a comfy way. So those are 2 that I really recommend if you're living in a small space. Because perception is so important to how we feel in our rooms, I'm going to take a quick time out because I'm going to go through how to apply paint to the walls and how it can change your perception of the space. So let's go through a few examples because this is really helpful. If you go for light walls and a light ceiling, you will get a room that feels larger and airier. If you choose dark walls and a dark ceiling, you will get a more intimate, cozy, and cave-like vibe. Now, if you go for dark walls with a light ceiling, your room will instantly feel taller, while light walls and a dark ceiling will bring the ceiling lower and create a more intimate setting. Finally, darker sidewalls will narrow the room visually, while lighter sidewalls will elongate the space. So before you grab a paintbrush, ask yourself what you want to highlight and place the color with purpose. So to sum it up, what you want to take from this section is that you don't need more square footage, you just kind of need to design appropriately to expand the square footage you already have. So things like proportion and reflection and light will help you do that. Okay, before we move on to step number 4, I want to go through sensory layering, because if you are a kindergarten graduate like myself, then you know that us human beings have 5 senses. And more often than not, we focus on 2 of them within our spaces. And that is sight, so how things look to us, and touch, so how they feel. Now, there is a lot more that we can explore, and I want to dive a little deeper into how you can do it. So let's take a quick second to look at multisensory design because it has the power to create emotional comfort through touchable materials, layered lights, and scents that boost well-being. And here's what you can do. You can start by layering your textiles. So rug, throw, cushions in different weaves and different scales. Also, soft rugs and upholstered furniture help reduce noise and improve relaxation. You can also improve scent and thermal comfort. A candle or diffuser in scents like sandalwood or lavender, or a throw blanket for warmth offers small ways to control your environment and raise comfort. And you can also invest in plants. So they will add texture, they will add scent, color, and life to your space because comfort isn't just seen, it is felt. It is a feeling that you can engage, touch, see, hear, and smell. And your living room instantly becomes more soothing and human centered if you engage in all your senses. Now we're moving on to step number 4, and that is focal points and how to create them, because focal points are like the visual anchor of a well-designed room. If your eye knows where to land, things instantly feel more organized, calmer, and just more impactful. Studies on visual perception show we feel more at ease in spaces with a clear hierarchy. One main moment, then supporting elements. It's how the brain organizes what it sees. So, what makes a great focal point? The first thing you need to consider is scale. It needs presence, something that feels big enough to hold the room. You also want to consider contrast through color, texture, form, or light. And finally, authenticity, a real moment, not just a random big thing. Think fireplace, meaningful art, a sculptural plant, a dramatic pendant, or yes, a TV if it's done right. And here's how you're going to apply it into your space. You're going to choose one star and everything else is going to play backup. So position furniture and lighting so sight lines lead naturally to that moment. You have to think about having one hero and then supporting actors. If the TV is the star, let's be honest, it often is. Make it intentional. Built-ins, picture frame TV, or a gallery wall around it to blend tech with design. You can also use lighting to crown your focal point, so a picture light over art, a spotlight, or a floor lamp grazing texture on the wall will also help you do that. And finally, create secondary accents, so a sculptural lamp, a textured wall, or a bold rug, but let them whisper next to your hero piece and not take center stage. So to sum it up, what you want to learn from this section is that one strong focal point is so much better than lots of competing ones. So remember how I said that architects will choreograph where the eye goes, where the body goes within a space? This is the moment where you immediately capture attention and draw the eye straight to your focal point. So hopefully with the tips I gave you, you'll be able to do that. All right, guys, it's that time. It's time for you to put on your Sunday clothes because there's lots of world out there. And today we are promenading. We are promenading through the history of living rooms. Living room. Living room. What is living room? We're going to find out. It all started in the 17th century French courts. At Versailles, life revolved around spectacle. Everything was public, from waking up to eating dinner. But when Louis XIV came along, he quietly rebelled against that formality and created a new kind of space. Smaller, more intimate rooms designed not for ceremony, but for comfort. Architects began distinguishing between appartements de parade, formal rooms for display, and appartements de commodité, rooms for living, the ancestors of the modern living room. Then came the parlor. In the 18th and 19th century, the parlor was the home stage. Guests were received with tea, music, conversation, and announcements. Everything was curated, from family portraits to piano placement, all to convey respectability and refinement. Think Bridgerton vibes, everyone in the living room waiting for a social call. And then during the Industrial Revolution, mass production made furniture and decorative objects accessible to the middle class. For the first time, ordinary people could afford to create spaces that reflect not just wealth, but personality. And that's when the term living room appeared, a radical idea promoted in the late 19th century by Ladies' Home Journal editor Edward Bok, who argued that homes shouldn't have cold parlors reserved for guests or funerals, but warm spaces that families could actually live in. The next big shift came in the 1950s and 1960s with the television. It reoriented the entire room. Furniture stopped facing each other and started facing the screen. Designers and architects had to rethink layout, lighting, and circulation. The living room became the heart of post-war domestic life, informal, comfortable, and family-centered. And now, well, today's living room reflects the values of our generation: flexibility, authenticity, and connection. It's no longer a static room, it is a multiverse of daily life. We eat, work, rest, socialize, even exercise and meditate in the same space, and that forces the design to adapt. Sofas need to double as workstations, lighting must shift from daylight productivity to cozy evening calm, and objects from books to art are less about impressing others and more about expressing who we are. So when you're thinking about your living room, think beyond trends. Ask yourself, what do I want this room to say about how I live, connect, and recharge? Because that, not color or furniture, is the real foundation of design. Okay, for step number 5, we're going to go through some basic design principles that you will need in order to design your living room. And the thing is, architects, we're not guessing, we're repeating rules and tricks that we've learned and that work over and over and over again, and so can you. So if you learn some of these basic rules, you can apply them anywhere and they will, well, think of them as a foolproof way to give your space an upgrade. Let's put it that way. Let's start with some quick tips on shape and silhouette. You're gonna mix shapes for balance. So a round coffee table and straight line sofa will create softer flow and easier circulation. A vintage chair next to a lamp with a modern silhouette will create visual interest. And organic side tables or curved chairs can help break boxy layouts. So if you have a very angular room or architecture, bring in curves to soften it up. Now for proportion and scale. If you have a small room, you're going to go for sleek arms, raised legs on sofas, and a slimmer coffee table. If you have a larger room, then you're going to need visual weight. So a deep sofa, substantial rugs, oversized art, or lighting. And here's a rule of thumb: the sofa should anchor the room, so small furniture everywhere will make it feel like a waiting room. And bonus points if you mix scales, one hero piece like a sofa or a light, and medium-sized accents with a few small details to top it all off. Also consider repetition and rhythm, so repeat a color or material 3 times, like metal accents. You could have a light fixture, a coffee table, and a mirror frame, or warm wood that you can also spread throughout different pieces of furniture throughout your space. And remember to echo shapes. So for example, a dome floor lamp, a round poof, or an arched mirror can all bring that curved interest into your room. The key takeaway here is that your room will actually feel purposeful and designed and almost like an architect or an interior designer did it when you have things like scale and proportion and texture and circulation and all these things working together. That's what's going to give your space that designer touch. So hopefully if you can just apply some of these basic principles that I've just gone through, I promise you, you will feel like you just upgraded your space. So before we wrap up, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a little checklist and a few next steps so that you can kind of audit your own living room and have a look around and see what's there, what you need to improve. And that way you don't have to design it from scratch, guys. You could just give it a quick refresh that'll just make it feel like it's brand new and maybe even more functional or more beautiful than it was before. So consider this a little cheat sheet that you can run through your living room and think about what has been done and what needs to be done. So here's the list that I have for you. Do you have your program list complete? Is your focal point chosen and supported? Have you checked your sofa's quality and scale? Is there a rug anchoring the seating zone? Have you layered your lighting, ambient, task, accent? Is storage assigned and clutter edited out? And do you have sensory layers? So if you've checked everything off this list, then you are done and you can go ahead and pat yourself on the back because you've done a great job. But if you haven't checked everything off, then just choose 2 or 3 of these upgrades that you can apply to your space over a weekend. And I promise you, you will feel the difference immediately. So don't be scared of changing things up. Like I said, you don't have to design from scratch. You can just upgrade, move, and refresh what you've got. So try a few of these because they will do just that, refresh your space. So at the start of the video, I promised that I would teach you an architect's secret formula to create a beautiful living room. And now you have all of my tips, all of my tricks, and some of my magic tricks to help you along the way. We have talked layout, we have talked about focal points, about sensorial layering. We have talked about all of those great elements that make a space feel functional, lived in, and beautiful. So if by now you are feeling more confident and ready to take on your space, then drop a like, a subscribe, or a comment and let me know how your own design journey is going, because I really do love to hear from you guys. And remember that if you need more help putting your space together, especially a living room, I have 2 resources that will really help you out. One of them is the home checklist, and it goes room by room, and it has a whole section on living rooms, and it'll just tell you what you need in the space and give you some guides and schematics to make the decorating process easier. And the other resource I have is a color palette inspiration pack that will have lots of different color palettes organized by mood, and you can choose what works for you, your style, and kind of just compare and contrast them to see what you actually like before you put the colors on the wall. And that will help you with the whole section that I talked about on how to apply colors and shape perception of space through painting the walls. So hopefully you guys, this was useful to you. As per usual, I had a great time, and thank you so much for staying here and spending this time with me. And next week I will be back with more info on decor. So I'll see you then. Bye.